Spider-Man 2017 isn't anything special, and I could honestly end the video right there regarding the series, but after watching a total of 3 seasons and over 24 hours worth of the show, I feel like I've wasted a lot of my time watching this show, so let me explain to you why this series isn't that special. Mainly what I mean by this series not standing out is in the year of 2017 when this series came out, and then when I'm watching it right now in 2024, there are so many other Spider-Man series. Just looking at what I have next to me, we have Spectacular Spider-Man, which is a very short and concise Peter Parker Spider-Man-centric story that has a lot of his rogues gallery, but doesn't really expand outside of the standard Spider-Man characters. Then we have the Spider-Man series from the 90s that has basically every rogue of Spider-Man and Peter Parker that you could think of, along with characters like the X-Men, Daredevil, and Captain America that make appearances showing that this whole series is in its own universe. Then we have Ultimate Spider-Man, which is basically Spider-Man and his ragtag group of teenagers that all have superpowers and all go to this school where then they learn how to work with S.H.I.E.L.D. and fight the greater universe. They have multiverse plots, they have time-traveling plots, they have so many different Spider-Verse plots. That show has so much crammed into, like, I think the 4 seasons it has. There's a lot of content in that series. You have Spider-Man Unlimited, which is 2099 Spider-Man meets Batman Beyond with Venom and Carnage in space, which is its own micro series as it is. There's Spider-Man 1981, there's Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which are set on the same path chronologically, I think, where Spider-Man has Firestar and Iceman, and they just team up with the trio of them and they go and fight crime. Then you have the very first Spider-Man animated series from the 60s. Is it anything spectacular? No, but it's a good time capsule to go back in time and watch some of the first ever animation of Spider-Man. Very simple, very basic, very interesting and fun. And then you have the MTV Spider-Man series, which is a continuation of the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man, but it's set between Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, and then once Spider-Man 2 came out, it's no longer canonical. It's basically a what-if between Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2. Now, after I've just detailed all of Spider-Man's animated series, where does Spider-Man 2017 stack up and stand out amongst all of those? And the answer is not really anywhere. Starting with just the name Spider-Man, that's the series name, Spider-Man. So I'm calling it Spider-Man 2017 because that's when it was released. I've seen people call it Marvel's Spider-Man or Spider-Man 2017, just Spider-Man. It's just talking about the series alone, unless you know exactly what I'm talking about, you're going to get confused amongst all the other Spider-Man content out there. After watching all of the series and dedicating a lot of my time to it, I want to point out and highlight 3 reasons why I think this series does not stand out amongst all the other Spider-Man animated series. I'm going to briefly go over the 3 reasons why I think this series doesn't stand out, and then I'm going to run to the plot, talk about the good things I like of the show, talk about a lot of the bad stuff I don't like, and then kind of wrap this whole thing up. My first gripe with this series on why it doesn't stand out is it's basically copying Ultimate Spider-Man. This series follows Peter Parker, Miles Morales, Gwen, and Anya. I don't really know who Anya is, but long story short, these 4 characters, Peter turns into Spider-Man, Miles turns into Miles Morales Spider-Man, Gwen turns into Ghost Spider, Spider-Gwen, and Anya, I don't know her last name, turns into Spider-Woman. Now, right off the bat, you have these 4 main team characters that we're following, and there's a few other friends that are in there, but you have this main cast of 4 characters that are going to the school called Horizon High. Horizon High is basically a school for the gifted and talented. Think of it like the X-Men, except it's not all superpowered kids. Honestly, none of them are superpowered except for the 4 I just mentioned. They're all just really and extremely smart, and so they're always building these projects, which is a good plot device to explain why all this crazy stuff is going on. Compare that to Ultimate Spider-Man, you have this school funded by S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury where they all have superpowers, and that's your plot device to explain why so much stuff is happening all the time. That's only in the later season of Ultimate Spider-Man. I think it's season 3 and 4 where they have the S.H.I.E.L.D. school, but you have your main group of characters in Ultimate Spider-Man that actually go to, I believe, to Midtown, and they're superheroes in disguise amongst regular people, kind of exactly what Horizon High is doing in Spider-Man 2017. It's just copying basically the plot copy-paste from season 1 of Ultimate Spider-Man, thrown right into Spider-Man 2017. Along with the things that are being copied from Ultimate Spider-Man, it feels like a lot of the art style, specifically with the text and logo that they use in the subtitles and just the style and design of Spider-Man, it's kind of hard to explain from someone who's not an animator like myself. It just feels like it's ripped right out of Ultimate Spider-Man. Even the intro seems like it's almost just exactly the same as Ultimate Spider-Man with just a few things changed. I just can't help but watch this and then look right at Ultimate Spider-Man, the series that actually came chronologically closer to this series than any other series. Ultimate Spider-Man ended, and then this show started, I believe, like 2 or 3 years later. My second reason for why this series really doesn't stand out, and my biggest complaint I have with it, is it tries to tie in into the MCU, but it doesn't commit to the bit fully. There's probably a lot of behind the scenes problems and drama or whatever on why this Peter Parker in this story isn't the Peter Parker in the MCU. Hey, and that's totally fine, especially with Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man coming out later this year. That's going to be, to my knowledge, a prequel to our Tom Holland's Peter Parker Spider-Man set freshman year. that's its own thing. But this series, it feels like they're trying to do every single thing they can to like lean forward and inch into being in the MCU. You can make the argument that, oh, this Iron Man looks and sounds just like Tony Stark, but Tony Stark was not widely known to the degree that he is now with Robert Downey Jr. So I don't want to say that's the only reason why it sounds like he's from the MCU, but characters like Captain America, Thor, Hulk, all of their designs are very, very, Black Widow, all of them are very close to their MCU designs, and Spider-Man does the same thing that he does in Spider-Man Homecoming and Infinity War, where he's like, am I an Avenger yet? Am I an Avenger? And it's kind of like fanboying over Iron Man. He does that along with so many other things that tie into the MCU, which actually aren't a part of the MCU, though. It feels like they won't commit to the bit fully. And that's one thing that's just really frustrating and annoying when you have it in your mind going into this series. I'll touch upon this third part more when I get to the part of the series that I didn't like, but the third thing I have to say on why this series doesn't stand out is Peter Parker does not feel special. In all of the series that I just mentioned, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He is the main character in all of these series. Yes, he's the main character in Spider-Man 2017, but he doesn't stand out. In season 1, where I believe the show peaks, and I'll get into that later, in season 1 we see Gwen Stacy get her own powers and Miles Morales get their own spider powers, and it's revealed in the origin episode Peter Parker gets his spider kind of like the Amazing Spider-Man movies, where he got it in a lab where they're creating these spiders, not like a one-off thing. They're creating these spiders, spoiler alert, the Jackal is to create spider-powered people, and that's how Miles gets his powers too, not at the same time, but the 4 Spider people that I mentioned, Anya, Spider-Woman, Miles Morales, Spider-Man, Ghost Spider, Gwen Stacy, Spider-Woman, and Peter Parker, Spider-Man, they all have the exact same powers, except for Miles Morales, because I believe this was when Miles was kind of stepping into his own character around the comics time in 2017, where he has his invisibility powers, he has his electroshock powers, and then all the other Spider-Man powers. If you have your 4 main characters, and they all have essentially the same exact skill set, how does Peter Parker stand out amongst this? Peter Parker is not the smartest amongst his friend group. The only edge he has against the other Spider people are that he's somewhat, and I mean somewhat, more mature than characters like Miles, because Miles in this is reduced down to comic relief and he's like a 12-year-old with powers. That's its own issue. And then Peter Parker, I think, has 4 months of seniority over the other Spider people, which in terms of being a superhero and grasping your powers and stuff isn't much, because very quickly Anya, when she becomes Spider-Woman, and Gwen when she becomes Ghost Spider, they're killing it. They're doing their own thing as a duo, and I just couldn't help but think the whole time, why are we following Peter Parker except for the fact that Peter is always a Spider-Man? He is always the main Spider-Man. Because yeah, I love Peter Parker, but in this adaptation, Peter isn't doing anything special. Why are we following him when there's very more interesting characters like Harry Osborn that I'll get into, where I believe he has the most important and most interesting arc throughout all 3 seasons? But those are the main 3 reasons why I feel like this series doesn't stand out as any sort of Spider-Man series. I'll get into all of them more in detail, but right now let's just summarize the plot through all 3 seasons real quick and then jump into the things I did like. Long story short, for season 1, we get introduced to characters like Sandman, the Jackal, Norman Osborn, the Vulture, Scorpion, Rhino, Black Cat, Venom, all of Spider-Man's rogue gallery. Very generic at this point. If you've watched all the Spider-Man series, you know who you're going to get introduced to. But the main characters that stand out to me in season 1 have to be Norman Osborn, the Jackal, Doc Ock, Venom, and Harry Osborn. Without going episode by episode for season 1, the first half of season 1 follows Peter with his newfound powers, kind of coming to grips and learning how to become Spider-Man. Very standard basic stuff, fighting characters like Black Cat, Sandman, the Jackal, Vulture. Very standard Spider-Man stuff. And then halfway through season 1, Miles Morales gets his powers. We haven't even had half of a season, because there's 26 episodes in season 1. We haven't even had half of the season with Peter Parker Spider-Man before Miles gets his own powers. And this is just showing you where the series has taken us and how kind of we're going to speedrun this stuff. It speedruns stuff very fast. In season 1, we get introduced to Doc Ock, and it's not said immediately, but throughout season 1, we realize that Doc Ock is actually a 19-year-old gifted kid that is just a professor at Horizon High, which, like I said, was that very special school that everyone goes to. And, of course, the standard Dr. Otto Octavius stuff happens, where he becomes ego-filled and power-hungry, and is a little bit different. I'll speak on season 2. There's a big plot with Doc Ock that actually stands out a lot in this series, but season 1 Doc Ock is very by the books, and by the end of season 1, he's essentially the main bad guy. Norman Osborn's the one, the puppet master behind everything, orchestrating it. But throughout the latter half of season 1, Norman Osborn is creating his own school because Harry got kicked out of Horizon High, and he's creating the Osborn Academy, and it's essentially just going to be the smart school that's rivaling Horizon High. And the reason that Norman is doing this isn't because he's a nice guy, but he's trying to take all of the technology and all the creations of these smart kids and find a way to make those into villains to kill Spider-Man. One issue I have with this series, which isn't necessarily explainable, but it's an interesting and I felt like a very lazy way to write this series, is there's a lot of plot points that I feel like were ripped from other Spider-Man TV shows, and we're at the point in 2024, and when this was written in 2017, it's very hard to write Spider-Man stories because everyone knows who the standard villains are going to be. If you have an origin with Spider-Man in 2024 or even 2017, like this series, you know that at some point Norman Osborn's going to be evil. At some point Venom's going to come in, and is it going to be Eddie Brock, or are they going to do like what they did in Insomniac Spider-Man 2 where it's Harry? There's specific things that you have to change, or else the audience and people like myself who are Spider-Man fans, they're going to know exactly what to follow and how this series is going to go as a whole. So there's specific things in this series that I necessarily don't give a pass for. I couldn't help but think other series or other forms of media did this story better. At the end of season 1, what it mainly comes down to is there's the Osborn Academy, and then there's Horizon High. And Doc Ock throughout all of the season, I'd say about 3/4 of the season, he's a good guy. He's working with Spider-Man. He's an annoying, egotistic professor, but he's not a villain yet. And then at the end of season 1, Otto gets fired from Horizon High, and Norman Osborn picks him up as a professor. He kind of goes crazy power hungry and just does standard Doc Ock stuff. But the main takeaway from season 1 is that at the end, Norman Osborn's dying and Harry has to inject himself with experimental stuff to help cure his dad because of comic book reasons or whatever. They can't go to the hospital. So then the Hobgoblin appears, and throughout all of season 1, the series does do a really good job of showing Harry become the Hobgoblin, because spoiler alert, Norman Osborn is actually the Hobgoblin. But season 1 shows a whole series of events throughout multiple episodes of Harry building his orange armor, learning how to fly a glider. He gets a flaming sword that the Hobgoblin uses, and it shows Harry being this hero that's getting annoyed with Peter, does not like Spider-Man at all. So then when a Hobgoblin dressed exactly how Harry's dressed shows up and tries to kill Spider-Man, it makes sense. Us, the audience, are like, yeah, that's a natural progression of Harry's character, only for it to be revealed that it's actually Norman who's been gaslighting Harry into thinking that Harry was the Hobgoblin because Harry's passing out due to his own experimental drugs. And like I said, where I feel like this rips off other series, that's the plot to season 2 of Spectacular Spider-Man. Harry, we all think Harry's not the Hobgoblin, but we think he's the Green Goblin, and then it's actually shown and proven that no, it's Norman Osborn. He's gaslighting Harry. He's going back and forth, and it's one of those things that, like, if the Green Goblin were to show up in season 1, we would all be like, oh yeah, that's Norman Osborn. But with the Hobgoblin, since it's like a predecessor and it's a different character, we're like, oh, is it Harry? Is it Norman? But that's already been done, and so it's annoying, but I kind of give it a pass, but also it's ripping straight from Spectacular Spider-Man, but with an orange goblin instead of a green one. I don't know. The TLDR on season 2 is that the first half, kind of like season 1, is pretty forgettable. We have an interesting arc with Venom and Eddie Brock. We get introduced to characters like the Jackal, the Spot, Spider-Gwen, Gwen Stacy gets her powers, but the latter half of season 2, in between the finale and the last arc, and then like the 3/4 of the way through season 2, I believe, is the best arc in this series. And that's where they actually do it. They do the Superior Spider-Man story arc. There's this thing, and forgive me if I'm not pronouncing it or remembering it correctly, it's called the neurocortex, I believe. And it's essentially like Elon Musk's Neuralink, but from 2017, where you could like put your mind into machines to control it and stuff. And of course, that's how Doc Ock's going to be able to go crazy. And that's how they explain why Doc Ock suddenly becomes evil, is because his mind gets connected with the neurocortex, or whatever I just said it was called. And he's able to use his like arms, but he's also becoming evil because of it. Where Doc Ock, he wins, he defeats Spider-Man, puts his mind in Spider-Man's body, and Spider-Man's body is inside like Doc Ock's computer mainframe. This is actually really interesting, and I'm not just saying that because it's, oh, they're doing Superior Spider-Man, because that's always a fun like arc to do. But no, this is actually really interesting. You see probably the most emotional part out of the whole series. You see the difference between Peter Parker and Otto Octavius. You see Peter is inside Otto's mind, and like all of his memories are backed up in his computer. So Peter is able to relive all of Ock's memories to find out what happened to Ock. Why is he evil? And then Doc Ock in Peter's body is getting like flashbacks of Peter's childhood. So Doc Ock completely understands why Peter's so heroic, why he's always trying to save people and always trying to do the right thing. Whereas as Peter's finally understanding what went wrong with Doc. And like I said, the most emotional part of this is you see Doc got beaten as a kid from his abusive father because he was a nerd, because he was smart and intelligent, and his father was a blue-collar worker who's just like, oh, I hate science, I hate this, why can't you just throw a football, Otto, why are you nerdy, why are you doing XYZ, and is just abusive to his father. And he learns from his father the only way to get things in life is to use your two fists and to take what you want and to take action. And that right there, you see the difference between Uncle Ben and Ock's father, the two people that inspired Peter and Ock. It's very interesting, and Peter finally takes back his own body, not because he defeats Otto, but because Otto realizes that he needs to be a hero, because Otto starts doing stuff selfishly as soon as he gets the Spider-Man powers, and then he realizes, oh, no, I need to be a hero. And then that on top of Peter Parker reaching back out through a machine to Doc saying, like, you know, the right thing for me to do is to take my body back because I'm going to die if not. And they make this, the switch happen. And it's a really, really interesting arc. I think it's like 6 episodes or something. The best part of the whole series in my mind. And then right after that, really awesome, really like even emotional arc, you go to probably the worst part of the series. It is the end of season 2, and they do a mech. And a mech is the big bad guy through season 2. You have this really interesting, emotional, and empathetic arc, end of season 2, where the Jackal is just, he has a mech. And there's a whole Spider Island plot where I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail of it because it's so painfully boring, of the Jackal turning everyone into human spiders, and then because of that, a bunch of comic book stuff happens. But the last few episodes of season 2, the Jackal has a mech that Harry Osborn created because it was like his father's last legacy is to make this mech that's indestructible because it would do good for humanity, and Harry doesn't realize that it's a bad idea to make that. But of course Harry makes it because he's smart and has his father's blueprints for it. The Jackal steals that and then does bad guy stuff, and the 4 Spider-Man that have the exact same powers, and they all seem to do the exact same thing, and Harry Osborn take down the mech. And that's season 2. Time for season 3. I'll speedrun this one because it's titled Maximum Venom, I believe. Another thing that I feel like this ripped off from Ultimate Spider-Man is the latter half of Ultimate Spider-Man. Each season was titled something. I believe season 2, off the top of my mind, was the Sinister Six. I know season 4 or season 3, one of them was called like a Maximum Venom. Like there was a chunk of it in the intro that would say Venom, I believe, and then something to do with like Spider Wars or like the Spider-Verse in the other ones. But the season 1 and 2 in Spider-Man 2017 just say Spider-Man, Marvel's Spider-Man. And then season 3 says Maximum Venom. And so I think this is where the show, they were getting their funding pulled or something. The first 2 seasons have 26 episodes. This season only has 12. Now you would think, with this being the final season in the show and the fact that it's called Maximum Venom, you better believe every episode out of all 12 are going to be based around Venom and Spider-Man. No.
I am Groot!
Oh, this can't be good. All new Marvel Spider-Man Maximum.
You serious?
3 or 4 episodes in this season just deal with Baby Groot, and that's another reason why I think it's kind of close and they're trying to tie in everything they can with the MCU, because 2017, that was like around peak MCU Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 time of Baby Groot being cute. 4 episodes, I believe, deal with Baby Groot and the Young Avengers. They don't commit to the Young Avengers bit. They have Miss Marvel, Ironheart, and Amadeus Cho, which is his own can of worms, but he's essentially just Hulkling. It follows them preparing what's going to happen for the end of the season with like a Venom arc, but we basically just twiddle our thumbs, and I fell asleep during it. I don't know if that's because I was tired of watching this very mid-series, or it's like, what are we doing with it? Like, the arc just was not interesting. But at the first half of season 3, something happens. Like Peter and Max Modell. Max Modell is essentially the principal of Horizon High. He's what you would think Otto Octavius would be if he wasn't evil, just a really kind-hearted man who's very intelligent and is a great mentor to the kids. He and Spider-Man make a synthetic spider suit with the Venom because they killed Venom, or like the Venom symbiote, but they have a synthetic like symbiote, but then actually it's revealed that they didn't kill Venom, and so it's like Spider-Man fights the Venom symbiote with the synthetic one. Venom takes the synthetic, then you have a really strong Venom. That's like 4 episodes. They finally defeat Venom, and then the last half, and really the only thing that stuck out to me about season 3 is an arc with Dr. Connors, which season 2 had the Jackal as the last big bad. Season 3 is essentially orchestrated by the Jackal and Norman Osborn, which we'll get to in a second. Dr. Connors basically finds out what Max has been doing with the Venom symbiotes. He's been experimenting on the side with it, and he goes to the school board and is like, hey, you gotta fire this guy. And so they put him on like temporary leave, and all of Max's friends and like students basically go on trial and speak on Max's behalf, saying like, oh, he's such a good guy, blah blah blah. And then it's revealed that Dr. Connors knows Peter Parker as Spider-Man. He unmasks himself to the school, but it's not news. It's like only kept in the school that he's Spider-Man, which I don't know why it wouldn't break and be like at least New York City wide news. And then what ends up happening is Dr. Connors becomes the principal of the school. Max is fired, and then through Dr. Connors being the principal, Norman Osborn, who survived what had happened in season 1, which was him just getting defeated essentially, he is now like the puppet master once again, doing the exact same thing he did in season 1, except using Dr. Connors as his puppet because Norman Osborn is injured and he has the serum to keep Dr. Connors from becoming the Lizard. Very basic stuff. And through using Dr. Connors, he enacts all these plots to get the own like Venom symbiote to himself, and he becomes the worst creature, not only aesthetically looking, but just it's so stupid. I don't know what was going on in 2017 or 2018 when the series like season 3 was going on, but everyone had a hard-on and like a huge fascination on Venom. There was a whole arc of Venom and other like Avengers and Marvel characters in this universe like bonding together. So there was like the Venom Avengers, Venom Groot, Venom Cloak and Dagger, all this stuff. And then the big bad in season 3 is what they call the Dark Goblin. And look, I'm all for like if you want to mix up, like I said, it's hard to write stories in the modern age of Spider-Man that are not tied to other past arcs or stories with Spider-Man media. I get that. So if you want to like inspire and take some stories from different points of media and then like switch them and make them your own, that's totally fine, but make it good. Dark Goblin is Norman Osborn's dying because of goblin cancer, right? He injects himself with the goblin stuff to turn like Jackal DNA to turn himself into the Jackal, which is I guess this story's in-universe explanation to make him like green, to look like the Green Goblin finally, which he could have just worn like the Power Ranger suit like they did in Spider-Man 1, but that's besides the point. And then he like gets the Venom symbiote that Dr. Connors stole from Max Modell to like fuse a Venom and like Jackal combination to become a goblin-esque creature. At this point, if we're going for like the big brooding like goblin, just go do what they did in Ultimate Spider-Man, where you have the ultimate version of Green Goblin, where he's just a mass like Hulk version sized goblin monster. This Dark Goblin Venom-esque creature with the Jackal mixed in, it's so stupid. And Norman being gone for 2.5 or like 1.5 seasons, that's totally fine. I get it. That builds on the suspense of like who's orchestrating things, even though it's very obvious that it's Norman Osborn. But it's like, oh, where's Norman been? What's been going on? And then you have this creature that is supposed to be the payoff to the entire series. And he's a dark goblin, like Venom Jackal mix. At least commit to him being a goblin. But he is so easily defeated by Peter and Harry. It's laughable. He hires these, what I can only call goons, that like, they try and make it like personalized to the other Spider people. So the Jackal, Miles Warren, is Gwen's uncle. They turn Miles' dad into Swarm, and then they get the Chameleon to pretend to be Anya, Spider-Woman's sister, to have like a Penny Parker mech suit. And so it like gets all of the 4 Spider-Man spread out to fight like their one-on-one battles, and they all defeat the villains like that. Like it's hardly any struggle. It's supposed to be like an emotional thing, like Miles finds out his dad is a bad guy, and then his dad's like, oh, I'm sad, and then just runs away. Gwen says, hey, uncle, quit being evil. And he says, I'm only being evil because I have other evil plans, so I'm gonna like backstab Norman. And then they like stop fighting, and then Anya defeats the Chameleon because the Chameleon's not powerful, he's just driving a mech. And then she realizes, oh, okay, you're not my sister, so there's no emotional payoff at all. All 4 of them come together, beat the Dark Goblin so fast, and then that's basically it. Wait, no, there's 2 more episodes, which, why are we doing this? We had a huge, what felt like series finale, and now there's 2 more episodes. I'm not going to get into details of it. It's so stupid. The last 2 episodes in this series are the real Venom is back, and then he gets cuckolded by Scream and other symbiotes that come from the Venom planet that they opened a portal to. and they're like, we're gonna destroy the Earth, and it's just 2 episodes of standard spider symbiote stuff, and then the series ends once they defeat the bad guys. Very stupid. Now let's get into the small things that I liked about this series. After going through my notes, I think some of the only stuff I liked from this series were the Superior Spider-Man arc, and the fact that there's a little bit of world building that, like, if you're having 3 seasons, there's expected world building to happen, so that's not anything crazy. That's really about it. The characters of Max Modell and the contrast of him with Peter Parker and the rest of the kids at Horizon High, I would praise it because that's a very interesting thing, and to my knowledge, that doesn't happen in a lot of Spider-Man comics because he's normally like a standalone character that teams up with other characters on the side. But that's exactly what happened in Ultimate Spider-Man, and whether you love that series or like I do, or you don't like it because of what it is, that's totally fine. But there's no way you don't realize it's like the exact same thing. All of the things from this season or this series that I like, I feel like they're just ripped and don't have as well of an adaptation from other forms of Spider-Man media. It's like, I don't know why this series was made, probably other than just to keep the rights to have a Spider-Man TV show. Finally, let's get into the meat and potatoes. Let's get into the good stuff. By good stuff, I mean the stuff I did not like, the stuff I hated about this series. Number 1, they do a lot of telling and not showing. And if you're going to write any sort of script for a book, a movie, a TV show, show and then tell. Or show and don't tell. Because your audience, you have to remember, your audience is smarter than you are. An example of how this series tells but doesn't show is all 4 of the main spider people by season 2, like halfway through it, they all have their powers. But they're not explaining when you get to season 3 how they're so skilled. And you could just say, yeah, with time goes on. But there's hardly any trial and error. And that's my favorite part about watching superhero or just any hero's journey is the trial and error. Another instance is Peter Parker has to explain to Max Modell in episode 2 of season 3 why he won't go public with his identity. Because Max finds out that Spider-Man's Peter Parker because he spends a lot of time with both of them. And Peter basically is like, I can't let my loved ones get in danger, but doesn't elaborate at all. Max says like, oh, Iron Man gets public with his identity. All these people are, and Spider-Man's only answer is that he's not, like, he's still a teenager. He's not an Avenger, which, yes, that makes sense because of everything we know of Spider-Man in other forms of media. He's a little kid. He's a teenager. He's in high school, even though he's not predominantly in high school. But in this version, he is. And it's like, yeah, you got to keep your loved ones safe. That makes sense. But he doesn't say that. He's just like, oh, I'm not an Avenger. Max is the one who explains it to us, the audience, not Peter. A few episodes later, he's like, Peter, now I get why you don't go public with your identity. And Peter just looks at him and is like, mm-hmm. And then Max says, you got to keep your loved ones, and does the explanation for us. And it's like, why was Peter not explaining this? But also, why don't we show instances of why? Peter can't just say, oh, to keep my loved ones safe, when nothing bad has ever happened to his loved ones. The only bad stuff that's happened to the people he cares about are his friends, and it's because they're at Horizon. I'm going to get a headache. Another annoying thing about this series is I spoke on this a little bit regarding season 3. There's so many different Venom plot lines, which if you have a character that is just, you're defeating them and they're coming back multiple times, Venom shows up, I think, in season 1 and is a constant threat until season 3, but it's not like every episode is Venom. It's like, we defeated him, and then 6 episodes later, he's like, actually, I'm back now. And it's just back and forth. It just lessens the impact of the overall character. By the time season 3 came around and I realized, oh, it's maximum Venom season, I didn't care because I had basically what felt like a whole season worth of episodes in the prior seasons that were all to deal with Venom. And it's like, I've had my Venom fix. I don't know if there's like a Venom agenda from the higher ups that are like pushing, go do Venom. But it was just like, why? It just lessens the impact of the overall character. This video is already getting long, but the last 2 things I want to say about what I don't like about this series is that in season 3, how there's 12 episodes, the first half of each episode, it just feels like filler. They had to have hit a quota because there was 12 episodes in season 3, and they're all put into like 6 different arcs, with both of them having 2 episodes per arc. But there's no reason for each arc to have 2 episodes. All of them are very drawn out and monotonous. It just does not, there's no need for it, no explanation. No one wanted this. I'll speak for the people. No one wanted season 3, and there were no plot points that like season 2 didn't wrap up. Season 2 felt like a good definitive ending, even though season 2 sucked. But there's characters at the beginning of season 3 that get thrown in like MJ. You know, you could say this is a little kid's show. This is a show about Spider-Man in high school. We're not going to push Peter Parker having a relationship because he's in high school, and high school boys definitely don't care about relationships. Like, no. But that's fine. All through season 1 and 2, there was nothing even hinted at of Peter Parker wanting to have a relationship with anybody. And then MJ moves in next door in season 3, and all of a sudden MJ's like head over heels for Peter. It's so weird. The final 2 episodes deal with a dance, and she's like, well, she basically asks Peter to be her date to Peter's dance because they go to different schools. Her and Peter never spend any time together throughout season 3. He saves the day at the school dance, and she kisses him on the cheek at the very end of the series and is like, we're gonna have the rest of our lives to spend together, or something like that. It felt so rushed. Like, oh, what does Spider-Man do at the end of a Spider-Man story? He gets with MJ and they tie a little bow on everything. It was so stupid. The last thing I want to say about my biggest complaint with this series is that Peter Parker is so annoying. Yes, Spider-Man's annoying in a way of he is always joking and always coming up with quips to annoy his villains. That's one thing. This show is trying to push the Peter Parker is the smartest person in the room and the most annoying person in the room agenda full blast. There's a reason why it's been so long between Spider-Man videos that I've made, because after watching episode 1 of this series, the first 5 minutes, I couldn't finish episode 1 and I couldn't force myself to watch episode 2. There was about 2 weeks where I had a reminder on my phone every single day, watch Spider-Man 2017, and I just couldn't bring myself to it because of Peter Parker. He gets better throughout the seasons. Peter Parker's annoyance and his millennial zany humor gets taken down a little bit, but that is the only way I can describe how annoying Peter and a lot of the characters are in this show, because yeah, they're all geniuses. They all have a millennial zany humor type dialogue of like, oh, this, and this, and then they wink at the camera, and I'll play some clips right now of how annoying it is. That'll explain it more than I can.
Name?
Peter Parker. P is in phosphorus, E is in electron, T is in...
Okay, you're on the list.
Oh, sphenopalatine ganglioneuralgia.
Can't you just say brain freeze like everyone else?
But that wouldn't be accurate. Of course I do. It's my first day in a new environment, so naturally my hands are processing the incoming sensory signals sent from my...
Okay.
Lastly, I had some enjoyment watching the series. I'm not gonna lie and say that I didn't enjoy any of it, but there's a good chunk of it that I just couldn't help myself but thinking, there's other series that do these things better. If you want to watch the Spider-Man series about a group of ragtag teens that go out and fight the villains of New York, whatever, watch Ultimate Spider-Man. I know I keep referencing that. If you want to watch a really emotional driven story of just standalone Peter Parker, watch Spectacular Spider-Man. If you want to watch your own Spider-Man retro futuristic 2099, go watch Spider-Man Unlimited. There's so many different Spider-Man adaptations, especially in the animated realm. Us Spider-Man fans are eating so well that this series has nowhere to fit in to say watch me, this is what I provide. It just feels like every single thing that this series tries to do is pulling from other adaptations that have done it better. And this series does not build upon any of the things that they're taking from the other series as well. Finishing out the tier list, I'm gonna put this series at D tier. I'm looking at it right now. It's on par with the 60s Spider-Man in a sense that it's okay. There's nothing special about it. Honestly, I would rather watch the MTV Spider-Man series over this purely because it sucks, but it's fun bad. It's enjoyable. I get why there's a cult-like following behind this series because it's so stupid and funny. Spider-Man from the 60s and this Spider-Man from 2017, they're so bland and boring, and the Spider-Man series from the 80s does everything better than the 60s, and every other Spider-Man adaptation in the animated realm does everything 1,000 times better than Spider-Man 2017. It's interesting for some of the Venom arcs, the Harry and Norman Osborn back and forth that they stole from Spectacular Spider-Man, and then the Superior Spider-Man storyline. The rest of the series, nothing special. If you made it this far into the video about listening to me talk about Spider-Man from 2017, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. I love making these videos. I know it's been a long time since I've uploaded a video relating to Spider-Man or any of this tier list that I'm doing, but it's because this took a lot out of me. I didn't want to talk about this series for a long time because like I said, there's nothing special to it. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I absolutely love making these videos. I love hearing you guys' feedback. If you liked this series, or if you hated this series, or you thought it was just okay, let me know. Let me know your comments below. Thank you to my one member that I have. Memberships are now open. My mom's my mom's calcium cannons. Yes, I know. Memberships are now available. I'll put on the screen what they can do and like what you get from becoming a member. If you guys want to get access to early videos or live streams once a month with me and the rest of the members, just go ahead and click the link. I'll put it on screen right now. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to compile all of the tier list Spider-Man videos that I've done into one mega video, and that's when I'll fully talk in depth over every single series that is on the tier list, and I'll finally give my final thoughts on which shows you should watch, which shows you shouldn't, and then just kind of compile it all together. And then we're going to do a big switch from content on this channel, but I'll get into that at the end of that video. For now, thank you so much for watching. Take care.